So, I want you to think back to September 4th, 2025.
Oh, yeah, the dinner.
Right, the dinner. You have this incredibly cinematic scene at the White House, just gilded plates, cameras flashing everywhere, and Sam Altman and Tim Cook are sitting side by side.
Looking like the absolute best of friends.
Exactly. I mean, it was pitched to the public as this, like, ultimate alliance. You had the undisputed brain of the whole AI revolution being wrapped perfectly inside Apple's pristine hardware. It looked like San Francisco's mind inside Cupertino's shell, you know?
It really did. It felt like the tech deal of the decade.
But then you fast forward just 10 months, July 10th, 2026, and those exact same two companies are just tearing each other apart in a federal courthouse in California.
Yeah, it's a completely stunning reversal.
And Apple isn't just suing over some, minor patent infringement. They're accusing OpenAI of this massive top-to-bottom campaign of trade secret theft. I mean, involving everyone from junior engineers all the way up to the executive suite.
Which is wild, because in less than a year, we went from clinking glasses at a state dinner to literally facing off in federal court. And I think human nature being what it is, our immediate instinct is to look for the gossip. Right?
Oh, 100%. We want the movie version.
Right. We want to know, like, which secret meeting went wrong or who stabbed who in the back in some closed-door boardroom.
But our mission in this deep dive today is to look way past those obvious headlines, like way past the corporate betrayal stuff.
Because there's something much deeper going on here.
Exactly. We are using this brilliant piece of analysis written by Marc Abergel. He's a Paris-based luxury executive, and we're going to use his framework to sort of recreate this intellectual journey for you.
It's such a good framework, too.
It really is. Abergel argues that nothing actually went wrong in the traditional sense of, like, a broken promise. This whole collision was a structural inevitability. So we're going to uncover the hidden economic gravity that's basically dictating the entire tech world.
And it all builds to this one unforgettable idea, which is intelligence creates value, but desire captures it.
Intelligence creates value, but desire captures it. Okay, let's unpack this because it is an incredibly clarifying lens.
It really is. Because if you just look at the visible scoreboard right now, without Abergel's framework, you're faced with this massive, glaring paradox.
Well, hold on. Let me stop you there because the scoreboard seems pretty one-sided to me.
How so?
I mean, if you look at literally every visible measure of tech success, OpenAI is winning the race, right? They're hitting 92 out of 100 on those complex reasoning benchmarks.
Yeah, the capabilities are undeniable.
And they hold like 74% of consumer AI mindshare. They achieved that ultimate cultural victory where ask ChatGPT is now a verb. It's like Google it. So where exactly is the paradox?
The paradox pops up the second you look at the financials attached to that scoreboard.
Okay, right.
OpenAI is burning through mountains of cash. I mean, their operating losses are vastly exceeding their revenue. Their own finance folks have been warning that the data center costs, the literal electricity and servers needed to make that intelligence work, it's outrunning their ability to pay for it.
Wow.
Yeah, and they've even had to delay their IPO, so they are the undisputed heavyweight champions of the technology, but they are just bleeding capital.
And then on the flip side, you have Apple, who, by all public accounts, spent the last couple of years just kind of stumbling through the AI race.
Yeah, Siri was delayed and then delayed again.
Right, and when they finally had to patch the leaks, they made this really humiliating public concession back in June 2024. They're reportedly paying Google roughly $1 billion a year just to rent Gemini to run behind their own assistant.
Having to rent the brain from your oldest rival. Ouch!
Exactly. But despite publicly losing the most important tech race of the century, Apple just posted its 2 largest quarters in history.
It's crazy.
They reached a $4.89 trillion valuation. They narrowly passed NVIDIA to become the most valuable company on Earth.
Which is exactly the paradox.
It defies every conventional rule of business I know. If OpenAI is the brains of the operation, if they are the ones literally inventing the future, why are they bleeding cash while Apple mints money?
Right.
I mean, it feels like being a Michelin star chef, right? You're doing all the grueling, brilliant cooking in the kitchen, creating these absolute masterpieces.
No, that's a great way to look at it.
But then the landlord who owns the restaurant building is somehow taking 99% of the profits? How does a company with 74% market share end up working for the landlord?
So to explain the mechanics of why a landlord always wins in this scenario, Abergel introduces this framework he calls the desire stack.
Okay, the desire stack. Walk me through it.
So this basically breaks down how technology is built versus how it's actually monetized.
Mhm.
At the very bottom of the stack, like in the basement, you have invention. This is the raw capability. The foundational models,
Mhm.
the custom silicon chips, those massive data centers we were just talking about.
So this is where OpenAI lives.
Yes, down in the basement. And it requires absolute genius to build this layer, obviously.
Mm.
But Abergel points out this brutal economic truth. The bottom of the stack is where cost and risk pool like water in a basement.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because you're spending tens of billions on hardware before you even know if the model is going to hallucinate or just completely fail.
Exactly. You carry all the risk.
Yeah.
Now, moving up above invention, you have the product layer.
Right.
This is the engineering work of taking that raw, wild capability and packaging it into an interface that, a normal human being can actually use.
Makes sense.
Then above product, you have distribution. Simply putting that product in front of billions of people.
And then we reach the top.
Right. The penthouse of the stack. The top layer is desire.
Design.
And remember, Abergel comes from the Paris luxury world, so he isn't talking about, like, cheap advertising or marketing gimmicks. He means desirability in its absolute purest form.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
It's the accumulated relationship, the deep trust, the daily ritual that determines why a person reaches for this specific object and not that one. It is the layer of pure margin capture.
Wait, calling it desire feels a bit abstract to me, though.
How do you mean?
Are we really just talking about habit and ecosystem lock-in? Because, I use Google Maps every day out of sheer utility, not because I genuinely desire it, it just gets me to the grocery store the fastest.
That's a fair distinction, but think about it this way. Utility gets you to the product layer. But what keeps you there when a competitor offers the exact same utility for free? Abergel uses the French luxury houses as his baseline here. Take Hermes. They consistently outperform these massive luxury conglomerates that are many times their size. Why? Because they don't just sell a handbag.
Right, they sell exclusivity.
They own the wanting so completely that the wait list itself becomes the product's value. The waiting is the luxury.
Okay, I know comparing a Silicon Valley tech company to a French fashion house might sound like a stretch for some people, but if you translate that to tech-native realities, it actually makes perfect sense.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about the blue versus green text bubbles on an iPhone. Apple didn't just build a better messaging app, they turned the blue bubble into this massive social signifier.
Exactly.
They turned the wait list of luxury into a digital tribal marker. That isn't just utility. That is emotional lock-in.
It is, and it's the exact same dynamic that allowed Apple to destroy BlackBerry 15 years ago.
Oh, that's a great example.
Because BlackBerry had a great product.
Yeah.
They were optimizing battery life and that tactile keyboard feedback, but they were living entirely in the product layer.
Well, Apple was playing a different game.
Right. Apple didn't just make a phone with a better battery. They changed what a phone actually meant. They turned it into an identity and a daily ritual. They captured the top of the stack.
So if I'm tracking this correctly, the core thesis here is that value does not stay where it is created.
Nope. It migrates upward.
The bottom of the stack pays for the future, but the top of the stack collects it.
That is the essential mechanism. Being indispensable is not the same thing as capturing the profit. And history proves this out perfectly. Think back to the 1990s, the famous Intel Inside campaign.
Oh, yeah.
Intel was the OpenAI of its day. They supplied the indispensable computational brain for almost every PC. You literally couldn't run the machine without them.
But they didn't own the customer relationship. The PC manufacturers like Dell or Compaq, and then later the software ecosystems like Windows, they own the interface.
Exactly. Intel sold to the OEMs who controlled the brand in the box. So while Intel was completely indispensable, they missed out on the greatest share of the margins.
That's wild.
Another flawless example of this is Visa.
Okay, how does Visa fit in?
Visa operates almost entirely at the top of the desire stack. They don't manufacture anything physical, they lend zero money, they carry absolutely none of the credit risk.
Wait, really? None?
None. The banks are down in the basement funding all of that default risk and holding the capital. But Visa collects a massive toll on a huge share of global commerce because they own the moment of the transaction. They own the protocol and the ritual of the swipe.
Wow. So being indispensable actually makes you vulnerable if you don't own the endpoint. That completely flips how I normally think about innovation.
It really changes the perspective.
And when you look at the Apple and OpenAI partnership from June 2024 through this lens, the power dynamic is just brutally clear. OpenAI supplied the intelligence, but Apple kept the customer.
Yes. Apple owned the wanting.
Every single ChatGPT query on an iPhone flowed through Apple's interface, under Apple's terms. It just reinforced the user's ritual of reaching for that glass rectangle every morning.
So OpenAI got distribution, sure, but they were basically reduced to being an ingredient.
They became a supplier. And Silicon Valley history is just littered with the corpses of companies that accepted supplier economics, which provides the causal link for literally everything OpenAI have been doing recently.
Because if Apple is effectively taxing OpenAI's intelligence, OpenAI cannot survive long-term at the bottom of the stack. They are forced to build their own conduit to the consumer.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if you are trapped in that basement taking on all the risk, you can't just stay there. You have to build a staircase.
It's a get out.
Which puts their recent, seemingly chaotic acquisition spree into a completely different light for me. It wasn't random diversification. It was a desperate, textbook attempt to pull off a prison break.
A prison break, exactly.
Let's talk about their $6.5 billion acquisition of a hardware startup called IO.
Yeah, so this move confused a lot of analysts at the time. OpenAI paid $6.5 billion for a company that had absolutely no shipped product, zero revenue.
What were they buying?
What they were actually doing was attempting to buy a desire layer right off the shelf. They paid that money for IO, which essentially meant they were just buying Jony Ive, the architect of Apple's aesthetic, and his team of 50 Apple veterans.
Wow. So their bet was that desire is a deliverable. They figured, hey, if we buy the guy who designed the objects that a billion people already love, he can just conjure that wanting again for us.
But Abergel points out exactly why that $6.5 billion appraisal was actually a massive misunderstanding of how the stack works.
How so?
Because Jony Ive's brilliant taste is just an input. It's not the stack itself. Desire isn't just a pretty object. It's the muscle memory of a billion thumbs. It's the default setting of a billion mornings. Jony Ive designed inside a cathedral that Apple spent 50 years building. He didn't own the congregation.
Oh, that's a perfect way to phrase it. Using a more mechanical analogy, it's like Jony Ive designed the steering wheel, but Apple owns the entire highway infrastructure.
Right.
OpenAI bought the guy who makes the beautiful steering wheel, but they have no roads to drive on. You can't just drop a steering wheel into a user's life and expect them to immediately change their entire commute.
You can see that reality setting in right now. The evidence of OpenAI's hardware pivot so far is, well, it's rough.
Yeah, it hasn't been great.
They initially promised this completely new concept in AI hardware, something revolutionary that would just bypass the smartphone entirely. But in recent courtroom admissions, the timeline for this grand device has slipped to at least February 2027.
Right.
And furthermore, recent reporting suggests the device has been completely downgraded to a $200 to $300 smart speaker with a webcam.
Which is a product category that Amazon and Google have completely dominated with Echo and Nest for, over a decade.
Precisely. And the only piece of hardware they have actually managed to ship to customers so far, a little mechanical keypad accessory for developers.
Oof.
Yeah. They learned very quickly that you cannot simply buy the muscle memory of a billion users overnight.
So follow the logic here. OpenAI is bleeding cash at the bottom of the stack, subsidizing the intelligence layer for the entire world. They realize they have to own the customer relationship to survive. They don't have the decades required to build that ritual from scratch. So they try to buy it for $6.5 billion and realize that buying a famous designer doesn't instantly buy you an ecosystem.
No, it doesn't.
So they are cornered. Because OpenAI couldn't build Desire fast enough and they learned they couldn't just buy it for billions of dollars, they were left with only one option. They allegedly tried to take it.
Which brings us directly back to that federal courthouse in July 2026. Apple's lawsuit isn't some vague complaint about company culture or poaching talent.
No, it's specific.
It is incredibly specific and aggressive. They allege that their highly confidential project code names were just showing up in OpenAI's recruiting outreach. They claim candidates were encouraged to bring proprietary Apple hardware components into job interviews.
That is just wild to me, just casually bringing unreleased hardware to a job interview at a rival company.
It speaks to the utter desperation of the climb. And the most aggressive allegation, Apple claims a departed engineer kept his company laptop, found a bug that let him back into Apple's internal cloud, and downloaded dozens of highly confidential files while he was actively building hardware for OpenAI.
Now, obviously, we have to say these are allegations, and OpenAI will have their day in court to answer them. But what's really important here isn't just the drama of stolen schematic files. If we apply the Abergel framework, we can see what Apple is actually defending.
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Apple isn't just protecting a schematic for a new hinge or a circuit board layout.
Right.
Trade secrets are just the visible, tangible asset. What Apple is violently defending is the invisible asset. They are protecting the mechanism of margin capture. They are defending the economic architecture that turns a piece of plastic and glass into peerless pricing power. They are defending their position at the top of the desire stack.
And the timing of this lawsuit is entirely deliberate, isn't it? Apple filed this massive complaint just 8 weeks before Tim Cook is scheduled to officially pass the CEO baton to John Ternus.
Yeah, that's not a coincidence.
This lawsuit is Cook documenting the moat, fortifying the castle walls, and establishing the absolute legal perimeter right before he hands over the keys to the kingdom.
And while Apple spends millions defending its moat in court, OpenAI is forced to delay its IPO. Because going public means they finally have to ask the public market to price the most expensive, desperate corporate climb in history. They have to admit they are stuck in the basement.
Meanwhile, while Apple and OpenAI are locked in this high-profile death match over who gets to control the desire layer, there is a massive quiet winner in the room that we haven't touched on yet.
Oh, Google.
Yes. Everyone is hyper-focused on the Apple-OpenAI duel, but Google is just quietly thriving in the background. Sure, Apple is paying them $1 billion to rent Gemini, which seems humiliating on the surface, but Google isn't relying on a single fragile entry point the way OpenAI is.
Not at all. Google is mastering the desire stack through sheer breadth. To understand how their moat works mechanically, you have to look at how their tools interlock.
Explain that.
Well, they don't just own one relationship, they own an entire web of them. If you use Chrome, it syncs seamlessly with your Gmail. Your Gmail feeds your Google Calendar. Your calendar prompts your Android phone to tell you when to leave for your flight, which automatically opens Google Maps.
It's an inescapable web of utility that slowly hardens into an unbreakable habit. If Apple's strength is the depth and premium prestige of the hardware relationship, Google's strength is the inescapable breadth of the software ecosystem.
Exactly.
They have woven themselves into the daily ritual of billions of people in a dozen different ways.
It perfectly illustrates Abergel's central point invention is rentable.
Right.
Apple is actively renting Gemini from Google. But desire, that daily human habit, that muscle memory, is not rentable. You either own the ecosystem that generates it, or you are entirely at the mercy of whoever does.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this deep dive? We've talked a lot about multi-trillion-dollar tech monopolies today, but this framework applies to almost every sector of the economy.
Absolutely does.
Look at your own career, your own company, your own industry. Where do you sit on the desire stack? Are you down in the basement, taking all the massive risks, doing the exhausting work of inventing the raw capability, only to watch a platform above you capture all the margin?
It's a tough spot to be in.
Or are you at the top? Are you the one who owns the relationship, the ritual, and the trust with the end user? Because whoever owns the wanting owns the market.
It is a brutal reality check for anyone who operates under the assumption that simply having the best technology is enough to win. In the modern economy, having the best product almost never guarantees victory.
It really doesn't. You can build it, you can buy it, you can rent it, or you can copy it, but desire cannot be cloned.
It's so true.
As we wrap up this deep dive, there's a final, totally new thought I want to leave you with. Something for you to mull over that builds on everything we've discussed today.
Okay, let's hear it.
We have established that the top of the stack, the ultimate prize, is completely dependent on human ritual. It relies on human habit, emotional lock-in, and the choices we make.
Right.
But what happens to the desire stack when AI agents start doing the buying for us?
Oh, wow. That raises a fascinating structural question.
Yeah.
Because we are rapidly moving toward a world where your AI assistant chooses your flights, orders your groceries, and maybe even selects your enterprise software.
Right.
And an AI makes those decisions based purely on cold utility, efficiency, and price.
Exactly. If an AI is making the purchasing decisions, it doesn't care about the prestige of a brand. It doesn't care about the beautiful aesthetic of a Jony Ive design, or whether a text bubble is blue or green.
It has no ego.
Right. It doesn't have muscle memory or daily rituals. If the human isn't the one doing the wanting anymore, does human desire still capture the value? Or does this entire economic stack that has governed the tech world for a century completely inverted?
It is the ultimate paradox to leave on. The very technology that OpenAI is desperately trying to use to climb the stack might eventually be the thing that destroys the stack entirely.
It is wild to think about. And it makes you view that opening story in a completely new light. September 2025, the White House. The gilded dinner plates. Sam Altman and Tim Cook sitting side by side, smiling for the cameras.
Yeah.
They weren't partners building a shared future. They were just two men occupying opposite ends of an inescapable market dynamic, slowly realizing that only one of them could survive the pull.